Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning to anyone who might be on the West Coast. I know that you have another hour going on right now in the morning. My name is Christopher Taylor. I am the Google Sales Specialist over here at D&H, and I'm so excited to have everyone here for the Chrome OS Flex webinar today. I'm hoping that everyone is comfortable and excited and ready to get into this deep dive because it's a really, really great opportunity, to just get your old devices and make something new out of them. We have two great speakers here for you today. So we have on the Google side, Fausto Tavares, and we have on the D&H side, Trevor Schubert. These are our Google gurus over here. Very, very excited to have them speak with you guys today and get and are able to present a little bit more to you about ChromeOS Flex. So we're going to be able to go through that. We're going to also be able to go through just Chrome Enterprise Upgrade in general and the D&H services that are available to you whenever you are purchasing any of these things. So we'll go through that, and we also have a Q&A at the end. However, questions are always welcome throughout. So if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them, and I will try to insert them as much as I can throughout the presentation, just so you guys get your answers. But if you want to hold off to the end too, that's all right. So if you want, Fausto, I'll pass it off to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So this is definitely one of my favorite topics. So I'm really, really excited about everyone being here. And once again, thank you for your time. I know that this is usually the time of the year when things are getting super busy. So I've been at Google now for 5 years, almost 5 years, and that entire time has been on Chrome. And I always used to think, like, it'd be really, really interesting if we could install this great operating system on any machine. And basically, that's exactly what ChromeOS Flex is. So this is a really interesting time. But so why would you even want to do that? I think is the question. So before we go into ChromeOS Flex, I wanted to start with ChromeOS in general. What is it that it brings to the table? So if anybody were to ask me what are the main things that I wanted to highlight about ChromeOS about ChromeOS in general, the elevator pitch, as they say, I would always start with security. Security is and has always been one of our main features. So with legacy systems, you have to install antivirus, you have to install encryption software. In many cases, you have to install other agents to kind of monitor certain things that the users may be doing. Um, and all of that stuff is not straight out of the box. The experience with Chrome OS is very different. So both from a software and a hardware perspective, everything comes ready to go. So regardless of the price point, any Chromebook that you purchase, right, it will have a TPM chip. And that TPM chip, the really great thing about it is that it will allow you to do encryption on the device and manage everything on the device itself. So it has that right out of the box. The second thing that that TPM chip does is that it enables something that we call Verify Boot. And what Verify Boot does is that it will create, it will allow you to boot up and have no antivirus installed, because every time you boot up, it will check to make sure that nothing has been tampered with within the operating system. If at any point it finds that the OS, the applications, the drivers, or even the BIOS have been tampered with, it will automatically delete that copy of the OS and give you a fresh copy that was kept in backup, side by side, running at all times. So, if you were to get infected with another system, you can then pretty much be done for the day, because you have to give your computer to IT. If that happened with a Chromebook device, all you have to do is restart. The moment you restart, you're up and running again. The other thing that's super valuable about Chrome OS is deployment. We now have zero-touch enrollment, and of course, D&H has been one of the number one partners with us from the beginning, deploying zero-touch enrollment, and you can actually get this service done through DNH. And this is something that makes the devices ready to go in just about 6.5 minutes from the moment the end user takes the devices out of the box and connect to a Wi-Fi network. So truly extremely fast, 63% faster than a typical Windows machine deployment. The other thing is easy management. So everything that we do is managed through the Google Admin Console. And of course, in the Google Admin Console, in there, you can manage your users, your devices, you can manage your applications, restrictions. Everything is done through that environment. And of course, it's a very modern experience. I always say that nowadays we're all kind of used to the idea of doing something on one device, having that data synchronized through the cloud. And then when you go to another device, we expect the data to be updated. Whenever you go on Facebook or Gmail and you do any kind of work, it's seamless. And that's kind of the experience that we provide with Chrome OS. It's very modern. It's sort of like what people expect nowadays. And then the last part is where the money comes in. What kind of savings are we looking at? $463 per device per year is kind of on average of what we're looking to save. So how do we achieve that? Well, first, I always say that whenever you cut certain things that you have to apply to a computer, such as antivirus or encryption software, or if you deploy the devices faster, cutting the time that your IT department spends on deployment by half or more, then all of those are lying in a budget. And when you add it all up, we're talking about $463 per device per year. So substantial savings. And then the last part about sustainability is, what do you do with all devices? So that's where Chrome OS Flex comes in, right? What about if I told you that all of the benefits that I just talked about could actually be applied to the old machines that may be collected somewhere in a closet? So before I was here at Google, I was in IT admin for almost 20 years. And if there was one thing that was common throughout all my jobs, was the fact that I always had a closet full of computers that were a little old, but I just had them back there just in case. Because at some point, you may need one computer or two for another one that died. And, you keep them there. And sometimes that number will grow up by, to 40, 50 devices, especially the laptops, right? You can actually have the same proactive security that I talked about on those machines, and that ease of deployment and management, that modern experience that I talked about. But most importantly, we're talking about getting extra life out of the hardware that you have, and that has a couple of very important implications. One is you're saving money. Obviously, the economy, as bad as it is now, it's they've been saying it now for like the last 2 years, but it's about to get worse. It's always on the verge of getting worse. So that companies are trying to save. This is an easy kind of no-brain way of saving a substantial amount of money. But most importantly, these are devices that will not end up in a landfill somewhere. Every time I see, piles of electronics somewhere, with children in some cases going through them in a third world country just to pick electronic parts, that actually drives me mad. These devices have a very long lifespan, and we can make good use of them. And this is where ChromeOS Flex comes in. Now, how do we do that? Super easy. The first thing is that you go on our website, and when you go to that website, you're able to download the software for free. And that's key. The software itself is free. As a matter of fact, if you, as a regular user, not enterprise, not ideal, but as a regular user at home, have devices that you want to convert, you can go to the website, you can download it, you can convert your old Windows PC or Mac and convert them to Chrome OS Flex. And you could use it yourself, you could hand it to your children. It's a very secure operating system. So very good for yourself as well. So you download the software, you boot up that device from that USB drive, and then it's a very simple click, click, click process. And before 10 minutes go, you're going to have a machine that already has all of those advantages that I told you about built right in from the moment you start using them. Of course, there's several ways of doing it. I mentioned the USB drive, but it also has the capability of being done through a network. So of course, yeah, if you have a major deployment of these devices, let's say that you have a customer who has an IT department that's kind of spread out and they want to centralize the deployment through a network, that is completely doable. So that's totally okay. By the way, if there are some questions,
I was about to say we do have a couple of questions.
sure, go ahead.
Okay, so we have Jeff from Hyperride Technologies, and he was asking if he could use ChromeOS Flex with VMware as the base OS.
So VMware is EXI. From what I remember, that was actually kind of the bare metal operating system for on the server side. We have had some situations where some people are able to make it work. Basically have virtual machines on VMware, and they have been able to make it work. However, that is not one of our supported use cases. Later on, I'm going to be talking about the devices that are supported and how you can add additional devices to that list. But at the moment, what we are supporting are physical devices, not virtual devices. Next question.
We also have another question from Drew from VirtueCom. And he wanted to know if ChromeOS was aimed for EOL devices to keep them in use, and if the annual savings account for hardware repairs that are necessary for older devices.
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of savings, we see that a lot of those devices, in some cases, whenever you are, let's say that you were to refurbish them with Windows, what ends up happening in situations like that is that you do have to upgrade hardware on them, including RAM. In many cases, you may have to swap the video card, depending on the use case. So that is added to it. Of course, if there's some physical damage, there's nothing that we can do about that. But when a device is certified for ChromeOS Flex, and we do have a website that has a list of all the certified devices, those devices are listed as supported. You don't have to add anything else to them. You don't have to increase the RAM. You don't have to change any type of hardware. We take the device as it was released, we bring it into our lab, we dump the image on it, we test it out, and then we give it a rating, whether it works or it doesn't, or it works on caveats. So additional expenses are, you don't have to worry about those things there.
Yeah. What if the device isn't on the certified list?
That's a great question. We do have a slide to address that. We do have a process to add devices to that list. Okay.
Perfect. I'm gonna
wanted to quickly comment on Drew, if I could, for a second, and just say thanks. It's like we rehearsed this, Drew. I appreciate the message and the detail about that question, because it tiptoes not just into the EOL, but also the bare bones market. And I wanted to make sure that we reinforce that, because, not to give it away, but later at the end here, we're going to real-time go through a process with a bare bones machine, put OS Flex on it, and put it into a managed environment real-time. So if you do a key search in D&H's site, for example, for bare bones, I think you'll find upwards of 70 to 90 or so hits that'll come back with a variety of different brands. Some of those will be on the approved list. Some of them might not be. But again, not to take away from Fausto as far as the slides that are coming up, but there's a process to vet, to validate, and to get things on the approved list. And if you're ever not sure, don't hesitate to reach out to ProServe Integration at D&H. We can help you through that process.
Sure. There's another question here from Eric. Do I have to purchase ChromeOS Flex? So you don't have to purchase that. However, Michael is asking, can you use the Google Management License with ChromeOS Flex? And absolutely, that is what we're getting to. The software itself, you can download it. It is free to use. Like I said before, you can even use it for personal use. However, you're not here to deal with that. You're here to make money. How do you make money? All these devices can be managed in the Google Admin Console, which means you have to sell them a license. So let's start first by talking overall about what you gain the moment you drop that image into these devices. The first thing is all of that proactive security. I will say, however, there is one tiny little thing that is not the same, and that is the fact that a lot of these older Windows machines, they did not have a requirement for TPM chip. So, for example, let's say an older machine like 8, 9 years old, they didn't have a TPM requirement on the Windows side. From what I understand, on Windows 11, they do have it now, but that's just on newer modern devices. So what that means is that that encryption that I talked about at the beginning, that built-in encryption, instead of being hardware-based, it's going to be software-based encryption. Still going to be encrypted, still strong encryption, but of course, hardware encryption is usually a little bit more reliable than software-based encryption. But other than that, all the other built-in protections are in there, especially around viruses and ransomware attacks. Safe browsing and limiting the password reuse, that's all stuff that you can actually assign to these devices the moment you add them to the admin console. So all of that security stuff, it's in there. The other stuff is the deployment. So obviously, the great thing about it is that the moment these devices are added to the admin console and you pass them around, the cloud, the cloud profiles that we're known for come into play. So a user will log in into their device, and their profile will automatically be downloaded, synchronized, everything beautiful. We have at this point almost 600 policies that can be applied to these devices. So if you have a customer that really wants to tinker and make sure that these devices are locked down, they will be able to do this with the ChromeOS Flex devices. And of course, redeploying these devices is super easy because you can simply power wash them. You could actually get a device and just remove the users that logged in before very easily. So the experience, like I said, is pretty much transparent. It's very much the same. And like I said before, we're using then the existing hardware. Now, what kind of support do we expect? These devices, in some cases, it may be 3, 4, 5 years old. But when we look at a device and we have it listed as supported, you can expect this device to last, more than 10 years at that point. If, of course, the users manage to keep it alive. Let's say, you know how people handle some hardware. Sometimes they toss it around. They don't put as much value on it. They leave it on top of the car when they're driving back to the office. I've seen that happen to me before. Not to me, but to one of my users. So if they can keep it alive, 10 years of support, which is fantastic because that means you're getting updates very regularly. And it works extremely well. So it's for software that is free, then that's pretty good. We work with all the major OEMs. So all the ones that you see here, of course, Windows, Mac, Lenovo, every major OEM is supported. When you take that and then you add Chrome Enterprise Upgrade, that's when the solution kind of comes to life because that's when the device becomes managed. If you have a device that is unmanaged, it's going to be very difficult to keep things under control, obviously. So another thing that I wanted to highlight here is an additional savings that a lot of people don't realize. And that is the fact that these devices will be able to get more done with less electricity. I'm talking a reduction of almost 20% in electricity. And I wanted to bring this use case up. This is Nordic Choice Hotels. And the reason why they changed to ChromeOS Flex was not because of the 20% savings. It just came as a very nice, benefit. Their operations were hacked big time several years ago. They were actually in the process of testing ChromeOS Flex, which at the time used to be called Cloud Ready. When they got hacked, they got hit with ransomware, and they basically had to shut down their hotels for almost 2 weeks. However, during that time, they went in and they converted more than 5,000 devices to ChromeOS Flex. And the moment they did that, security instantly became better. They were able to reopen. And to this day, they are one of our #1 customers. They swear by it. And of course, the reduction on e-waste and the power consumption is just a fantastic extra bonus. Okay, so what are some of the most common ways that these devices are used? So, when a lot of people decided that they were going to work remotely, a lot of end customers were caught flat-footed. They didn't have enough devices. So whenever you have remote workers and you need to give them an extra device, having that extra device be a flex device is a very good idea, especially if they have a desktop that they can't take home. Boom, you give them an old laptop with ChromeOS Flex, and it's beautiful. Virtualization. So if you have customers with Citrix, VMware, Cameo, any of those virtualization solutions will work extremely well here. Contact Center has been one of our biggest ones so far. Whenever you use Contact Center, in many cases, you use accessories, and those accessories work extremely well. Most companies already have accessories, and they wouldn't want to spend additional money on accessories just because they're changing platforms. So you can use the same accessories, just convert it to ChromeOS Flex. Digital signage is one of our biggest solutions. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But essentially, everywhere you go and you see a digital sign, chances are that they have a solution in the background that is running on ChromeOS. And we have a very powerful solution there. And to that end, kiosks. So we have a new license that you can use that will basically run a single app mode. And this is half the cost of the normal license because it's running one app. But you could literally just convert all of those Windows machines that are running any customer-facing kiosk and convert them to ChromeOS. So
Real quick.
Yep.
Sorry not to cut you off. Just because we saw that we have a lot of different use cases for this. I also wanted to chime in since Rob asked the question, but how does Flex work with school districts? Is that a use case that has been brought up before?
Absolutely. One of the main areas, well, #1 is testing, obviously, because a lot of organizations want to have dedicated devices for testing, and if they do testing, at that point, basically, the device itself could be set up in kiosk mode and be basically restricted to that single app that they're using for the test. Which means, let's say that they're using a third-party tool, and they usually come with an app. The moment the students open it up, they cannot open any other app, including the browser, to go search for answers of the test that they're taking. So they're completely locked down to those tests. Another use case in EDU is signage within cafeterias, within the hallways of the school. I know when I grew up, we always used to see tons of things pinned on boards all throughout the schools and things that, nobody really read. But if you can actually use screens throughout the schools and just showing, content that rotates, that's usually a little bit more effective. And then the last one is to show the menus on the cafeterias. Luncheons have evolved a lot since back in my days. Nowadays, it changes pretty much every day. And guess what? They usually know ahead of time. I know because I have kids and they just even an app. They can upload this content easily and have a nice little menu that rotates so that the students always know what's coming up. And of course, when it comes to signage, there are additional things that could be done. I mentioned the hallway, but in some cases is in media rooms and things of that nature. But those are the first three that I can think of. Okay, does that
So I'll echo that, and I'll echo and just add that one of my favorite first Flex opportunities, say that 3 times fast, was last fall actually, because Flex was still at that point in its infancy, and I think that still it's gaining a lot of momentum. But it was an onboarding call for a new wave of Chromebooks going out to a very small district on the West Coast. And after going through kind of initial discovery and discussing, what this first batch of, we'll say it was maybe 20 or 30 true ChromeOS Chromebooks was looking like, comment was overheard by my team, by Sid Winter, our Google Solutions architect, and myself, and we were kind of going back and forth like, did we just hear that right? They said, yeah, we have to wait to get our next wave because we have a lot of these iMacs that are still in our deployment, and we have to kind of cycle those out of our budget. So we started asking those questions about, how old are those iMacs? What else are you trying to do with those? And realized that was a perfect opportunity to convert, I think it was just shy of 100 or so legacy iMacs that were in their district that they were trying to kind of work off of recycling and offboarding in that environment to turn those into Flex devices. So that's another example.
Yeah, and that right there in the middle that you see on this slide is precisely that. You're reducing e-waste and you're extending the life of those iMacs. Of course, whenever you have a company that is trying to modernize and just be cloud-based, it's a perfect opportunity, for you to do that. And of course, like I mentioned before, kiosk and digital signage is one of those areas that is a natural fit. So the transition from ChromeOS Flex devices to regular Chromebooks down the line, it's usually very, very common because they have a good experience with the devices, and then down the line, when those devices finally die, they want to go ahead and just buy regular Chromebooks. And the transition is transparent because it's the same user interface, right? Not only that, the devices themselves are managed from the same admin console, side by side. So the same policies will apply here. And then the moment the users log in, everything is converted. So basically, the big question then is, choose to deploy the ChromeOS devices or ChromeOS Flex, right? You have to know exactly when to do the right thing. Obviously, I always say, if you have devices laying around, always go for that first. As a customer, you want to extend the life of your devices. I myself have older machines. I have a Lenovo machine here, an X1 that I installed Flex on, works extremely well. But of course, we do have brand new devices that have Chrome OS. If they can spend on that, that should be your first choice, obviously. Now, I wanted to touch on the certification of devices because there were several questions about that. So right now the list is actually more than 500 devices the last time I checked. And again, there are all kinds of brands in there. We'll have a link once we send the deck out so that you can go and check out to make sure that the device that you're looking for is listed there. I just wanted to highlight one in this list, which is the HP Engage One Pro. That one was by a very large global furniture company. They wanted to use that device. It was not listed, but then they came and they told us, and let's just say we put it together. We were able to get one of those devices, bring it into the lab, make sure that everything worked well. We make some changes to the deployment, and next thing you know, they have thousands of devices all over the place. Quick question here that Rob has about using Flex in data centers. It's really up to you. However, if the device that you're installing it on is not on the supported list, I would tell you, I'm not going to tell you, no, don't try it. You could try it. Just know that some things may work, some things may not. But is it doable? Absolutely. I've seen many crazy use cases. However, this is mostly for end users. It's designed as an operating system for the end users, not necessarily on the server side of things. Okay. Now, how do you get started? I mentioned to you that you yourself can download this. So you can go to this website that you see here, and you can download your copy. It's very easy. Just When you do that, all you have to make sure of is that you have a USB drive with at least 8 gigs of space. Nowadays, you probably get that, when you go to Quick Check and buy a sandwich. Hey, here's a USB drive. That's how popular they are nowadays. So, not a lot of space. You will get it. The utility that you will download will convert the USB drive to a bootable drive, and then you will get started. So, some questions that I wanted to highlight here about the differences between between regular Chromebooks and the Chromebooks that are then running ChromeOS Flex, those old Windows machines. So the first thing is that we have a multi-layer security on ChromeOS on the Chromebooks because we have that encryption that is on the device itself. And that it's something that you can't duplicate if the machine that you're converting didn't have the hardware to begin with. So that's super important to know. The second thing is that the Google Play Store does not work on ChromeOS Flex. That means Android apps are not available on Flex. We don't see that as a huge issue. In most cases, when people are trying to convert to Flex, is because they want a cloud operating system and very flexible full screen experience. Some of the Android apps are just very small and they don't scale very well. And also, if you have a customer that's using Parallels, which is it's a local virtualization tool that you can download. The other thing that is not possible is the zero-touch enrollment part of deployment does not work because obviously a lot of these machines were built way before zero-touch enrollment was a thing. So they don't have the necessary hardware built in for us to make that happen, okay? So, okay, we actually need to skip that one. Let's talk a little bit now about how you make money, because that's obviously why we're here. So, as I mentioned to you before, the key here is that for every device that they convert to ChromeOS Flex, you're going to be selling them the Chrome Enterprise upgrade. Now, the Chrome Enterprise upgrade, it's a fantastic tool. That's what we call our license, by the way. This is what basically enables the advanced security. It enables additional policies through the Google Admin Console, and it's very scalable. We have companies on Enterprise that have more than 50,000 devices managed by very small teams. On the EDU side, we have districts with 67,000 devices that have a team of less than 10 people managing all of those, just to give you an idea of the scalability that we're talking about here. In terms of support, obviously, when you buy these licenses, you will get 24/7 support. You can basically call, open a case on the console itself. And of course, we do have a trial, and that's key. 30 days with 50 licenses are available to you whenever you start a new trial. What that means is that if you have an end customer that has some ChromeOS Flex devices and they want to convert them, all they need to do is they sign up for the trial. So they have those licenses, they can sign up those devices and do a real world test. That trial is basically unlimited in terms of capabilities. So you can test everything within the admin console for 30 days, completely unrestricted. Now, in terms of pricing, it's $50 per year per device, essentially. So this license, if they have 100 devices, you sell them 100 licenses, 1,000 licenses for 1,000 devices, obviously. Some people have asked about the Chromebook Enterprise. We do have some Chromebooks that brand new come with a license bundle already. The price of the license is baked into the device there. So you don't have to worry about that. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of things here so that there's no confusion, because some people don't realize that we have an EDU license and we have an enterprise license. We do have a $38 EDU license, and that's a one-time payment per device, right? So it's a perpetual license. Whenever they buy 1,000 Chromebooks, they have to buy 1,000 licenses. We have had recently, through our friends at DNH, a deal for almost 60,000 computers coming down the pike. And again, it's one-to-one. So if you sell them 1,000 devices, you have to make sure you sell them 1,000 licenses. In terms of nonprofits, please do not sell them the enterprise one, because they will be mad at you down the line when they find out that they are eligible for a $38 license. So if you have a customer that is a 501c3 institution, they be qualified. Chances are that they already have a subscription to TechSoup, and that's what we use to verify that they are indeed a nonprofit, and then they get that license at $38. The other thing that's super important to highlight is that the Chrome Enterprise upgrade, or any of the upgrades here that you see, these are not to manage your Android devices or your iOS devices. They are strictly for Chromebooks and for ChromeOS Flex devices, and that's it. However, if you have a customer that is already a workspace customer, they can actually do some management of those devices via the Google Admin Console through that subscription. It's completely separate. We don't, it's done within the same Admin Console, but it's not the upgrade that we're talking about here. So before we were talking about some of what happens when a device is not on the list. So what we do is whenever there's a big opportunity, we go ahead and we create a Salesforce opportunity. We fill out all the details, what's the upside, how many licenses, and all that stuff. And then we work with our sales reps to get information about the device, and we'll try to get one ourselves. Hopefully, we're able to buy it. I know that we have gone as far as going on eBay and putting bids on devices in order to get them successfully, by the way. And we bring it into our New York City lab, and we test it and we certify it. And usually works extremely well. And we do this with big opportunities. Obviously, if it's just an opportunity for 20 devices, and we don't see much upside, we'll take it into consideration, but it's not going to be at the top of the list, because we usually have a big list of devices, some of the most popular ones, obviously. We do have a form that needs to be filled out by the partner with this request. And once we get it, we just plug this information into the Salesforce opportunity. So now before I go into Chrome Enterprise Recommended, I wanted to take a quick break just to go through some of the questions on the Q&A so that we don't leave everything for the end. Ronnie was asking, how does Chrome OS work with IoT devices? So not very well, to be honest. If the device has not been extensively tested and put on the certified list, I would not recommend using it for that. In most cases, we're talking specific use cases like the ones that we mentioned before, with signage, users logging in, using one app or two. Of course, you could use it for a regular user that logs in and has a bunch of applications running at the same time. But IoT is not one of those areas that we have been focused on. As far as TAA compliance, not sure on that. I will have to get back to you. But usually, pretty much all of the security that is baked into Chrome OS is built in here, except for that TPM chip that is not existing on those old Windows machines. But we're gonna have to get back to you on that. And Jeff was saying that I was big on the VMware. So what I meant to say was, there are certain things that you could do with Flex that may not necessarily be supported. Some individuals have been able to get it to work on on some of the VMware EXI hardware. They have been able to make it work. Is it supported? No, those devices are not on the list. Just because the use case is not, we don't have a lot of demand for that, essentially. In most cases, when it comes to data centers and servers and things of that nature, people go with enterprise applications that are dedicated for that specific use case. So does it work? Yes, people have made it work. Is it supported? No. Whenever you buy Chrome Enterprise Recommended, whenever you buy Chrome Enterprise Upgrades, that's licensed, it will give you support, but it will be support for the devices that are on the list of supported devices. Okay? So, let's see, what else do we have here? Do I have to buy ChromeOS Flex? I think we answered that. Devices on the list, I think.
Just wanted to say I appreciate all the questions, everybody. Thank you for engaging and continuing to do what you do. We put this content together for you, our customers. You help us, get to the points that we are, and 10 plus years of Solutions Lab webcasts and webinars and all sorts of things. It's also awesome for me personally to see the same folks tuning in.
Yep.
Quick thought though on the TAA piece of it, Fausto. I mean, realistically, if the original device was TAA compliant, I feel like that would still apply. So that's just a thought for that, but we can formally respond.
So that's a good call out there. Chrome Enterprise Recommended. So what is it? When we started working on expanding on enterprise, we decided we needed to work a lot closer with a lot of the main players in several industries. We did that to basically make sure that their product was optimized to run on Chrome OS. And we were trying to make sure that whenever a new customer was moving from Windows to Chrome OS, that everything worked the way that they expected. And kind of to simplify the change management process, because obviously whenever you making a big change like that, there's a huge process. It's less cumbersome when you're using the same app. So for example, if you were using Citrix on Windows and you're just going from Citrix on Windows to Citrix on Chrome OS, the process is a little bit less cumbersome. So to that end, we work across several use cases and several industries to make sure that we partner with companies that we're working very closely to advance, what our vision essentially. And most of these applications are web-based or PWA, and in some cases they're Chrome web apps. Some of them didn't even have an app before we approached them, and we work very closely with them. I wanted to highlight a couple of them. One of them on the right side being Imprivata. If you have been to a hospital, clinic, or anything like that, you have seen people using Imprivata. Essentially, the way that it's used is it's with a card that people tap in order to log in, and everywhere they go and they tap, the moment they do that with Chrome OS, it logs them into their profile. And again, it's a cloud profile, so all of their applications follow them wherever they go. So it's a solution that works extremely well. In contact center, pretty sure you probably have customers that use RingCentral or TalkDesk or Five9. We work with those companies very closely to develop the solution. And then I wanted to highlight virtualization because we mentioned, before VMware and a few others. So when it comes to virtualization, the first two that we worked with were Citrix and VMware. So ESX as a platform, that hardware is not supported, obviously, but VMware Horizon is supported. So the application itself could be installed, pre-configured even on a ChromeOS Flex device. And from a ChromeOS Flex device, you then be able to access whatever you have on your VMware Horizon environment. You could either do applications or full desktop. The same applies to Citrix, and the same applies to Frame, which is Nutanix. We also have a really good relationship with a newcomer called Cameo. The great thing about them is that you could get up, started with virtualization very easily. The idea here is that you don't even have to stream the entire desktop, because in most cases, people just need an application or two virtualized. That application could be Microsoft Office or just Excel. Or in some cases, it could be a proprietary piece of hardware that they are not able to bring to the cloud. But what if I told you that by working with Cameo, this company will be able to get a server either on-prem or on the cloud, and then distribute that application to the Chrome users as if it were a web app. The moment you click on it, it looks like it's a native application, but in reality, it's being streamed remotely. That's just an idea of the kind of work that you could do with some of these devices. And we work very closely with Andrew and his team to make sure that their solution works better with us. So you could do a little bit more to learn about ChromeOS Flex. The location that you see at the bottom there is ChromeOSPartnerTraining.com. If you go there and you sign up, you'll see a lot of information, not just about ChromeOS Flex, but a huge range of solutions there. So we have more information, of course, about the license. We have information about the Chrome Enterprise Recommended and all of the solutions that we support. So please, if you want to learn more, just go there and we'll be able to give you a little bit more. So I think I already touched on a lot of this. It's like some of those differences between the old Cloud Ready and ChromeOS Flex. So Cloud Ready is what the company that created this tool used to be called, and they basically they created that based on the open source Chromium OS, which is what the project that Google leads to create the Chrome OS that you know and love. So eventually what ended up happening was that we bought them out about 3 years ago at this point, and then we basically changed the name and developed the solution as a native Google solution. So that means that we are on the same update schedule. So the moment a regular Chromebook gets updated, a ChromeOS Flex device will get updated. They work on the same admin console. You don't need a third-party console like you used to with Cloud Ready. And of course, it's the same code, so same level of security, and of course, it's free, so you don't have to pay. So I touched already on some of these, but just to highlight once again, education, it's a pretty big area for Flex. We do have a lot of customers in that space. Retail and VDI. So we have had a lot of customers in restaurants, hardware stores that you may be familiar with, furniture stores. There's a very popular wings place, very good chicken wings, and all of the menus are running ChromeOS Flex. Every time I go there, I tell who I went with, oh, by the way, there's some ChromeOS Flex devices. Most people don't realize, but it's pretty good solution there. So now what happens with services? Wanted to touch on this really quickly because we're running a little bit long time. So we do have something called the Partner Services Fund to help your end customers go through pilots and POCs and deployments and things of that nature. But I wanted to highlight before we proceed that this is for either new customers or existing customers that have a net new use case. You're upselling, basically. So the great thing about this is that the folks here at DNH can perform the services and we'll pay them. But you end up looking like the hero. The reseller is going to basically tell the end users that they're getting these services for free. Now, what kind of services are we talking about? Let's say that you have a customer that doesn't know how to do a proof of concept. Well, guess what? my man Trevor here knows how to set up a proof of concept very quickly. Pilots, workshops, deployment, all of those things could qualify for that. So now that I mentioned services, I wanted to pass it along to my man Trevor, who knows pretty much built the practice over there. So he'll be able to give you the lowdown on everything that they do. Go ahead, Trevor.
Thank you, sir. Well, 5 years at Google. I think I've definitely known you for all 5 of those, and I think we're coming up on a 10-year anniversary with Google at D&H as a whole. And looking back on 10 years worth of evolution in that platform, I still go back to the original. I think they were silver Samsung clamshells that we were starting to do deployments on, going, okay, what is this whole Chrome thing? And okay, we can actually do this in the warehouse prior to. And look, I know I'm no stranger to the terminology white glove. I think that'll always be with me for however long I'm with D&H and beyond. But I'm very respectful of the fact that many partners on this call I've worked with over the years, and some of you folks have your own direct practice, which is completely fine. Our goal in this is to be an augment for that. If you're facing, things like the way that they are, we're in our busy season again, and we've got 7,000 plus square feet worth of production space that we can do all of the traditional white glove, along with zero touch, asset tagging, laser etching, and then other things like green shipping, cutting down on the amount of waste. And a lot of the theme of this overall call and presentation has been around, being lean and being more efficient. This helps cut down on obviously the additional waste that an end user, or typically a school this time of year, would have to incur with all the additional OEM packaging. We can consolidate all of that ahead of time and just make that deployment go so much more smoothly. So in a nutshell, I mean, it's a practice. Reach out to ProServe Integration at D&H with any questions that you have about it. We can certainly work with the team to help provide quotes. And then in some of the bullet points that we're looking at on the screen here, back to what Falster was saying, kind of touch on what potentially could qualify for PSF funding if we could work with you to achieve that. I will say, without getting too far into that, because we are running short of time, most cases, we have to look at the education opportunities strategically, because they are very interested in looking at things in a net new perspective. But we have weekly cadences with Falsto and team, worked really well with them to identify what makes something net new and when education qualifies or when a business would qualify. And I can tell you 99% of the time, if it's a business opportunity, we're looking at that as almost pre-qualified before we even start the process. There's just a lot of new ground to break there, which is what we're excited to deploy with Flex and signage and all the things that Falsto had mentioned previously. And this slide was actually just a practice from the show from a few weeks ago. So Chris is still on. Chris Taylor and myself kind of put this into motion and put everything you guys saw on the call today in the webinar up to real world practice. What you see on the right, the Asus D&H Red machine there, that one's pushing about 10 years. I had to look up my admin console to verify the make and model of that, but that's a legacy Windows machine that's pushing about 10 years there, running the admin console. And if you can see the 3 Chromebooks in the middle there, those are actually all set up in a kiosk license capacity where they're just pointed at D&H's site. So proof of concept right from the booth, had a lot of questions, a lot of interested parties right from the get-go, because it's an impactful thing to be able to say back to some of the licensing and the pricing that we looked at earlier, that this is really all being achieved for, at least in the case of those 3 Chromebooks in the middle there, or any kind of ChromeOS or ChromeOS Flex device. If you want to manage it in a single app or signage capacity, you're doing so for 25 retail annual. Also, I think I'm getting that right, the subscription. So pretty powerful right there.
Yeah, the kiosk license is $25 per device per year.
And Rodney has confirmed he saw that in Hershey, so it's not all movie magic. Thank you, Rodney. And I know we are pressed for time, but actually just for the interest of that, we'll see if maybe we can answer some of the questions and maybe do a little bit of a fun kind of how-to. Prior to the call, really just a few minutes beforehand, had prepped a device to install ChromeOS Flex. So I've got an actual bare bones system with me ready to go. I've got the OS Flex thumb drive populated in it. I put 16 gigs of RAM in it, and just for the interest of making this thing zippy, I threw a 256 gig NVMe drive in there as well. So the actual process If anyone has done Chrome enrollment before, raise your hands, or virtually raise your hands. We'll pretend that's just about everybody, right? You'll notice that the process is almost identical. So we're going to install ChromeOS Flex. We're formatting the drive if it hasn't already been formatted, but in this case, it was a brand new drive, so it's going to go through that process. And perhaps there's some questions we can grab as we watch this happen real time. But honestly, it'll move very, very quickly once we get through the initial install, and then we boot back into it and we throw a license on this.
Yeah, while you're going through that, I just wanted to answer a couple of questions here. One is from Rob Reddington. How well does Flex compete with Microsoft? Is it better? So, let's say one of the main reasons why you are doing this is because, I don't know about you, but every time you use a Windows machine for more than 2 years, it becomes hot garbage. You boot up, it's super slow, whether it's because it has a virus or because Windows itself, over time with the updates, it becomes slower and slower. So it becomes unusable. The moment you wipe it and you install ChromeOS Flex on it, the problem is it's almost like the reverse, because a device that used to start in 10 seconds, like a ChromeOS device in 10 seconds, 6 months down the line, it's actually going to get faster. So as time goes on, we improve the relationship between the software and the hardware to make the devices even faster. The other advantage is that whenever you renew a machine with ChromeOS Flex, whether you are an individual or an organization, even a company, you don't have to pay for the software itself. If you're just using it unmanaged, it's free. The only situation in which you will pay is if you're using it through the Google Admin Console to change the policies. So that's where the money comes in. But as for individuals, you can just get it for free. So it's very, very convenient. And this is especially good if you're having customers that are trying to do a pilot. We already have a license trial that they can apply to these devices, essentially. Okay? So while that's going on, then I wanted to then go here. So Trevor, you can go ahead and talk about your wonderful team.
Absolutely. So as the slide denotes here, we've got several folks as part of this. Chris did a fantastic job of moderating. Thank you very much, Chris. Sid Winter, our cloud solutions architect for all things Google, is in the background here. Sid and I work in tandem for all the zero-touch deployments that come across the way here, and for any kind of onboarding calls. And then we all report back to Tiffany Ward, who's back from an extended little trip here, and we'll just leave it at that. She's doing well, and everything is great. Happy to be working with Tiffany and the team for everything that falls under the Google side of the house. Again, I kind of go back to where things were 10 years ago, or even just a few years ago. There wasn't this kind of staff or this kind of team in place, and it's really happy to be able to say that these are just several of the staff that's responsible in D&H as far as any kind of supports that come across the finish line for the aliases that we'll see in coming up. The two slides there, on the left for team aliases for ProServe integration and Google Sales. These are the folks that will ultimately, filter through and start to your responses.
Excellent. I think we're actually coming up on time. I see that the installation is still going. Usually, on average, the installation takes anywhere between 5 and 8 minutes, and then after that, you will be able to add it to the Google Admin Console. So while that goes on, before we get there, I just want to say thank you. I know we're at time, but I really appreciate all the questions. Those were fantastic. There was one about the SKUs there that we'll have to get back to you on that. As far as the where you can download it, fastest way would be to just do a quick search for ChromeOS Flex. You'll see that our website is the first one to pop up. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can just get to it really quickly. But okay, this is the address here that you see is go.google/ChromeOS Flex. Whenever you go there, you'll be able to download it to your USB drive. Okay? Okay, I hope that answered your questions, Jeffrey. Anybody else? Let's see.
See over here is the device
Hey,
uploaded
installation
now?
complete.
Yeah.
Magic. All the things that happen with podcast drama and live and what could go potentially wrong or take a little bit more.
Yeah.
Device will shut down in 47 seconds. So take our word for it. That was the process from start to finish. There was very little touch time that I had to incur to get it to this point. But back to some of the services with D&H, whether we coach you through this, whether we deploy a team to do this on-prem, or we do things in a bare bone capacity where we're doing what I just did in this scenario, it took me a fraction of the time to actually even assemble the parts that I needed in a bare bones capacity to put this to this state. Very easy. And I don't know if anyone can see if I'm screen sharing. I think I went into to try to share, but within my admin console, I'm sharing the Asus device that is a Flex machine that's currently being managed in my environment. So very easy, very powerful.
I just have a couple of questions that I wanted to go to before we get kicked off. Yes, the slides are going to be provided, so you'll be able to find in there the address that you need to, the address to the form that you need to fill out for the devices that are not on the list. For Drew, asking about a Windows 10 device that he has back home. Yes, if the device is on the list, I would encourage you to install it. And even if it's not on the list, sometimes you install it and you find that most things work. I did that myself at one point on a device that was not listed. And I do remember that I had a small issue because the device had a video card that was not supported. So I just, I didn't get the performance of the video card that I expected. But other than that, everything worked well. So you can go ahead and try it. And it's free. So you have nothing to lose there, I guess. Okay, Lisa was asking about is there an option for end-of-life Chromebooks at all? Unfortunately, not at the moment. It's not something that we're looking into just yet, okay? And I think those are all the questions, okay? So once again, thanks everyone. We really appreciate your time. Take care.
Thank you very, very much.